Generative AI, Agentic AI, almost everyone uses them as if they were synonyms, but they are wrong. They are two different names which offers two completely different capabilities. When I say generative AI, it is more about generating new piece of text. So it's like a chatbot. If you ask a question from ChatGPT and ChatGPT gives you a wonderful answer to that, you can call that as generative AI. But Agentic AI is something which is little different than that. And in this video, I'll try to give you a flavor of that, not by using certain slides, but by actually running some Python code. And by the way, this video is for somebody who is a developer, a founder, a PM, honestly anyone who keeps hearing things like AI agents, generative AI, thrown here and there in the meaning, but does not really understand the difference between them. In this video, I might be using some jargons like function calling, tool use, and so on and on, but you don't have to worry about them because I'll be talking about them in extreme detail when those topics show up. So let's keep things simple. Generative AI talks. Agentic AI acts in a loop. Now let me first explain in a visual manner what do I really mean by that loop. See, usually when you chat with an LLM does not have access to any tools. It answers you your question purely based on its knowledge base and nothing else. But there might be a lot of times when LLM might need access to tools in order to be able to answer your question. For example, if you ask it a question, what was my percentage of marks in board exam? It won't be able to tell you that. But if you allow it to have access to your Google Drive, where you have kept your 10th marks, 12th marks and everything, it can probably go ahead, fetch that file and answer your question perfectly well. So when we talk about Agentic AI, tools are something which play a crucial role. So your query goes all the way to LLM. The LLM plans which tool has to be used. Then the agent acts on that tool and we get the tool response which is sent back to LLM. Now LLM observes the response and based on that response, it decides what is the next thing that it has to do. The next thing it might decide to do could be yet another tool call, which is it might plan to make a tool call again, and then agent would act on that, and then the response would be sent back to LLM, so LLM would observe it. So if you see here, there is a loop of plan, act, observe. Do not worry if you did not understand this part because I'll show you the code which will make it completely clear. So let us have a look at this code. See, the important parts of this code is first thing, the model. The model I'm using here is GPT-4o Mini. This is the user task. So let's say you are the user and you want to buy 3 keyboards and 2 monitors and you want to know from LLM that what is the total in INR including 18% GST. You want to know the final number, which is the final amount. Okay, now let us look at the first and the easiest part. I'm skipping these for now. Let us look at the generative part. In the generative part, all that we do is we invoke our model and we pass it a bunch of messages in which the first message is a system message. This is also called a system prompt, where you are specifying that LLM is basically a shopping assistant and you're supposed to give a concrete final answer, you never have to refuse and all sorts of things. And here is the user task. So this is the same task that you saw right here all the way at the top. Okay, going back down again. So what we basically do here is we invoke the API, we get the response. After we get the response, we simply print out the response over here. Now, see, the response that you would get from here will be a generic response. And AI most probably would have hallucinated in figuring out the price of items that you are buying because it does not know the exact price. So this is the first function which I'll be running. The second function I'll be running is this, which is the agentic part. This agentic part contains a for loop that you can see here. You do not need to understand this completely at this point of time because we'll anyways be diving deep into it at a later point of time. But for now, let me just tell you that I'll first invoke the generative part and then the agentic part, and you will see the difference in their responses. So let me quickly run this piece of code. Okay, so you can see agentic part was in a loop. Generative part, which was this, gave me an answer, and that answer is this. The total amount including 18% GST is 18,300 and it most likely would have hallucinated and would have brought about this answer somehow. So basically it invented the prices. It had no way to know our real catalog. So this is something which is called as generation, where facts are generated, text is generated, but there are no real tools or there is no agentic loop in picture. What happens when you introduce tools? So let me just give you a quick sneak peek of what tools really are. So here if you see, I'm maintaining some sort of a catalog called as price. So this is my price book, and it contains the price of a keyboard and a monitor in US dollars. Now, the number that relates 1 USD to INR is equal to 83. This is also something that I have stored at my end. So see, these are the pieces of information that LLM needs to know. And it might not have these pieces of information in its knowledge base. So it needs to be supplied these information by virtue of something called as a tool. So you can see I have written a tool which is nothing but a simple function called as getPrice. This getPrice thing, it simply takes the item and then from the dictionary, it retrieves the price of that. So you can see that was our dictionary. From this dictionary, it retrieves the value corresponding to this key, which is the price corresponding to this key. Similarly, I have a method called as calculator. Why I have this method called as calculator is because AI can hallucinate while doing mathematical computations. So I am providing it a calculator tool to perform basic arithmetic calculations. Similarly, I have another tool which converts US dollar to INR. And the factor that it uses is something that we had declared in our code base. So essentially, you can understand that there are three tools: getPrice, calculator, and convert to INR. Now you might have it in your head that, hey, how are you going to pass these functions all the way via making network call to LLM? Then for that, there is an idea of tools JSON. So you can define a JSON of tools where you can say that, hey, this is the schema of my first function. And this function is called as getPrice, and this is the description of it. So the description is the most important part, which allows LLM to understand that when it has to invoke this particular tool. The description clearly says that look up the catalog price of an item in USD. So if you send a prompt to LLM that I want to buy keyboard, then in order to know the price of keyboard, it would call this particular function. Okay. Similarly, you have a function called as calculator. The description says that if you want to evaluate a basic arithmetic expression, then you have to call it. So here, the thing that you will have to pass will basically be an expression, which will be a string, right? And this can be something like this. All right. Similarly, you have another function called as convert to INR, which takes an amount in USD and simply converts that into Indian national rupees. Now, we have also configured something called as maximum number of steps, which is equal to 8. And I'll tell you why I have done this, because sometimes what happens is that agents tend to get inside a loop, and that loop can be infinite loop where they keep on making infinite number of LLM calls and keep on burning your tokens. If you do not want that, you have to have an upper cap on the number of loops that you need to be run. Okay, then you have a function called as run tool, which basically takes the tool name and simply invokes that tool. Now let's get into the important part, which is this particular part. So here you can see that we have a system prompt. In this system prompt, we are saying that you are an autonomous agent and you have to break the task into steps. And here I am saying that you do not have to guess the price when you have the final INR stated clearly and stop calling tools. So basically, here when I supplied it with task, and now when I made an API call, you can see in this API call, I also passed the set of tools and sent a response. Now from this response, I fetched the message, and if I saw that message contained some tool calls within it, if it did not contain the tool calls, then I simply returned. And if it did contain the tool calls, I'm just going to iterate on those tool calls, which is I'm going to run those tool calls, and I'm going to loop over again and again, again and again. So basically, if you now look at the whole response that is being displayed over here, let's see how it looks like. In the first iteration, the LLM decided that my plan is to call getPrice for keyboard. Now for keyboard, the tool response was 40. So now LLM observed that, hey, for keyboard, the price in USD is 40. But the user wants to buy a monitor also. So let me now call getPrice for monitor. So can you see that after this, another round of loop started, where LLM decided to get price for monitor. When it got price for monitor, then it decided to call calculator in order to compute 3 times 40 plus 2 times 50. Why? Because we are purchasing 3 keyboards and 2 monitors. Now the tool response from here was equals to 420. And now LLM decided to make another tool call, which is convert to INR, which takes US dollar and converts that into Indian national rupees. And then LLM further decided to call calculator to apply the GST. When it applied GST, which is it added 18% to it, it got the final response, the final result. And at this point of time, LLM decided that, hey, now we should stop because now the goal has been met. So now the final response from LLM is that the total cost for 3 keyboards and 2 monitors, including 18% GST, is approximately this much. So this is what agentic loop is, and this is really what AI agents do. So AI agents are not simply LLM wrappers. So AI agents are backed by the intelligence of LLMs, but they work on top of tools. They don't just work on top of tools, they work on top of several other things also, which we will dive deep in the time to come. So for now in this video, my agenda was to just give you an idea of difference between generative AI and agentic AI. And of course, if you found it useful, then hit the subscribe button.